The night had fallen heavy on the colony outpost. Cold winds rushed through the narrow streets, carrying the taste of iron and dust. Lights flickered weakly in the distance, but most of the shops were already closed. Only one building kept a dim glow alive, a small café that seemed forgotten by time. The human traveler stepped through the door, his shoulders stiff from days of wandering. His boots carried the dirt of long roads, his coat was torn at the edges, and his face showed exhaustion. The warmth inside the café felt like a shield against the storm outside. Behind the counter stood an alien woman. Her skin shimmered faintly under the weak light, a color that shifted between silver and pale blue. Her eyes, large and bright, studied the human with a quiet intensity. She wore a simple apron, yet her presence felt more commanding than the entire room. The human moved closer, rubbing his hands together for warmth. He expected the usual polite greeting, maybe silence, but instead he heard a whisper. The alien woman leaned slightly forward, her voice soft and low, almost like a secret carried by the wind. "For a warm drink, I can take care of you behind the counter," she said. The words froze him in place. It was not what he expected. It was not the casual offer of a drink. Her tone carried weight, a hidden meaning he could not yet understand. He stared at her, unsure if he should answer or step back into the storm. The cafe itself felt strange. Shadows gathered in the corners, and the faint hum of machines gave the room an uneasy rhythm. Empty tables stretched out before him, each one clean, untouched, as if no customer had sat there in years. The human finally found his voice. "Just a drink," he said, his tone firm but uncertain. The alien woman tilted her head, almost smiling, though it was not the smile of welcome. It was something sharper, something that suggested she knew more about him than he thought possible. Without another word, she poured a steaming liquid into a glass made of dark crystal. The scent was sweet, but beneath it lurked something bitter. As she set the glass down, her eyes never left his face. The human lifted it carefully, the warmth spreading through his hands. He took a slow sip, the taste rich and deep, and for a moment, he felt a wave of calm. But the calm was deceptive. He could still feel her eyes watching, measuring, waiting. The silence between them stretched long, broken only by the faint whistle of the wind outside. He felt like the cafe was more than a place of rest. It was a cage, a stage, or perhaps a test. "Not many come here," she said suddenly, her voice smooth as water over stone. "Most are afraid of what waits inside." The human set the glass down slowly. "And should I be afraid?" Her gaze sharpened, and she leaned closer across the counter. "That depends on who you are and why you came." His heart beat faster. He had told no one about his journey, about the thing he carried hidden in his pack, wrapped in layers of cloth. He had believed this outpost would be a safe stop, nothing more than a place to rest. Yet this woman, with her strange calm and piercing eyes, made him question everything. She reached out with one delicate hand and brushed her fingers across the counter, tracing invisible patterns on the wood. Her whisper returned, softer this time, almost like a lullaby. "If you want warmth, you must trust me. If you want safety, you must stay close." The human shifted in his seat, uneasy. There was something in her words, a promise and a threat woven together. He tried to look away, but her gaze held him firm, like chains made of light. The cafe's door rattled suddenly as the wind slammed against it. He flinched, but she did not move. Her eyes stayed locked on him, her whisper steady. "For a warm drink, I can take care of you," she repeated. The human swallowed hard. He wanted to believe she was offering kindness, that she was simply another soul in a lonely world. Yet deep inside, he felt the weight of suspicion. This was no ordinary cafe. This was no ordinary woman. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift, as if something unseen stirred at the edge of the room. He glanced quickly, but when he turned back, the woman was still watching him, her expression calm, unreadable. He took another sip of the drink, letting the heat travel down his throat. The warmth spread through his chest, but his mind was colder than ever. Questions filled him louder than the storm outside. Who was she? What did she know? And why did her words feel like both a gift and a warning? The cafe door rattled again, this time with a heavier sound. A distant voice echoed outside, sharp and commanding, though the words were lost to the wind. The alien woman's expression changed. Her smile faded, her eyes narrowed, and she whispered quickly, "Stay quiet. Do not move." The human froze. He could feel tension rising, crawling across the room like electricity. The woman stepped away from the counter, moving with grace, her apron swaying lightly as she approached the door. For the first time, the traveler realized that stepping into this cafe was not a choice of rest. It was the beginning of something. He could no longer escape. And as the door began to open, the last words he heard were her whisper, sharp and urgent. "For a warm drink, I can take care of you, but only if you trust me." The cafe door had barely closed when silence wrapped around the room again. The human sat frozen on the stool, gripping the warm glass tightly. His heart pounded like a drum, his mind heavy with questions. The alien woman stood still near the door, her head tilted as if she could hear things beyond the human's range. After a long pause, she turned back toward him. Her steps were soundless, her presence both calming and unsettling. She gestured with her hand, her long fingers moving. "In a slow curve, come," she whispered. "Not here, it is not safe, behind the counter." The human hesitated. His instincts told him not to follow strangers into dark rooms, yet his gut told him staying at the counter was no better. He looked once at the empty tables, the shadows, clinging to the corners, and then he rose. She moved ahead, her form brushing past glowing jars lined along the shelves. Some gave off faint light. Others pulsed like breathing hearts. The counter opened into a narrow passage, hidden by a curtain of woven cloth. She slipped through it with ease. The human followed, ducking beneath the curtain. The air changed instantly. It was warmer, heavier, filled with scents he could not name. The back room stretched wider than he expected. It felt like a different world entirely, carved into the bones of the building. Dim lanterns floated along the ceiling, casting golden light that trembled like candle flames. Wooden crates lined the walls, some sealed, some cracked open, filled with strange goods. Metal parts, shimmering cloth, dried herbs that smelled both sweet and sharp. Yet it was not the crates that caught his attention. It was the presence. He felt eyes on him, though he saw no one. Shadows seemed to bend along the walls as if something moved just beyond sight. He stepped closer to the woman, his voice low. "Who else is here?" She glanced over her shoulder, her silver blue skin, glowing softly in the lantern light. "Do not be afraid. They are not your enemy. Not yet." Her words sent a shiver down his spine. Not yet. From the darkness, faint shapes began to appear. Small figures, crouched low, their outlines alien yet fragile. Children, perhaps, or something, close to it. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the lanterns like mirrors. They did not speak, they only watched. The human tightened his grip on his coat, the weight of his hidden pack pressing against his side. He wondered if these eyes could see through him, if they could sense what he carried. The woman moved to a table at the far end of the room. She placed a hand on its surface and a panel of light flickered open, showing maps, routes, and symbols the human did not recognize. She turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "You carry something," she said softly. "Something that does not belong to you, yet you protect it as if it is your own. That is why they are hunting you." The human's mouth went dry. He had never spoken of it, never told anyone, yet somehow this woman saw past his silence. He tried to steady his voice. "How do you know?" She lowered her gaze to the floor, her whisper almost drowned by the hum of the lanterns. "Because I once carried the same, and because I lost it." Her words cut deeper than any blade. He did not know her story, but the grief in her tone was clear. She had endured something heavy, something he could almost feel in the air. Before he could answer, a noise broke the stillness. The curtain behind them rippled, the sound of boots pressed against the floorboards. The human's chest tightened. Someone had entered the café. The alien woman raised her hand sharply, signaling him to stay silent. She moved with swift grace, pulling him toward a shelf stacked with jars. With one push, the shelf swung open, revealing a hollow space hidden in the wall. "In here," she ordered, her whisper fierce. The human stepped inside, pressing against the cramped space. The shelf slid shut again, leaving him in darkness. Through a thin gap he could see slivers of the room beyond. The curtain parted and figures entered. Tall, armored, their movements sharp and heavy. Enforcers. Their voices rumbled low, their language rough, demanding. The woman faced them calmly, her posture straight, her tone steady as she spoke back. The human could not understand every word, but he understood enough. They were searching. They were hunting, and she was lying to them. The enforcers moved closer, scanning the room, their weapons gleaming under the lantern light. One of them paused near the shelf where the human hid. The man held his breath, his heart pounding so hard he feared it would give him away. The woman spoke louder now, her voice laced with anger. She slammed her hand on the table, the panel of maps flashing bright. The enforcers turned toward her, distracted by her defiance. Finally, after tense minutes that stretched like hours, they retreated. Their heavy boots thundered as they left, the curtain falling silent once more. The shelf swung open and the woman's face appeared, her silver blue skin pale under the lanterns. She extended her hand to him. "You see now," she whispered. "This place is not what it seems, and neither am I. If you stay, you must trust me. If you leave, you will not survive the night." The human stared at her hand, torn between doubt and need. The shadows of the back room seemed to lean closer, waiting for his answer. And in that moment he understood. Stepping through the curtain was not just about hiding. It was a step into a war he did not yet understand. The back room fell into silence once more after the enforcers left. The human stepped out of the hollow shelf, his legs stiff from crouching, his breath still shaky. His eyes adjusted to the golden lantern light again, and he turned toward the alien woman. She stood tall, her chest rising slowly, as if she had just fought a battle without drawing a weapon. "You lied for me," he said. His voice carried both gratitude and suspicion. The woman's silver blue eyes met his, calm and sharp. "I did more than lie. I took your danger onto myself. If they find out, they will burn this place to the ground." The human clenched his fists. He hated depending on strangers, especially ones who seemed to know more about him than he wanted. Revealed. He glanced toward the figures hiding in the shadows, the silent, fragile shapes with glowing eyes that had not moved since he entered. "Why?" he asked at last. "Why risk yourself for me?" She did not answer right away. Instead, she walked to the table with the glowing maps. With a graceful motion, she rolled up her sleeve, exposing her arm. On the inside of her wrist, carved into her skin, was a mark. It shimmered faintly under the lantern light, a symbol of curved lines and sharp edges, glowing like fire beneath her skin. "This is why," she whispered. The human stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the mark. It pulsed faintly as if alive. "What does it mean?" She traced the symbol with her other hand, her voice soft but steady. "It is the mark of resistance. Those who wear it have chosen to fight against the enforcers, against their masters, against everything they stand for. It is a vow that cannot be broken." He frowned. "And you think I am one of you?" Her gaze cut through him. "You carry something they want. You protect it like it is part of you. That is enough. You may not have the mark, but the weight on your back has already chosen your side." The human felt his chest tighten. The pack on his shoulder seemed heavier than before, as if her words had dragged its secrets closer to the surface. He wanted to deny it, to walk away, but the memory of her whisper, the heat of her eyes, and the presence of the enforcers made it impossible. Still, Doubt remained. And if I trust you, what then? What happens to me? She lowered her arm, letting the sleeve fall back into place. Then you will survive. For now. Her words carried no promise of safety, only a fragile offer. Yet her calm, her defiance against the enforcers, and the strange grief in her eyes pressed against his hesitation. From the shadows, one of the small figures moved closer. It stepped into the light. A child, alien yet delicate, its skin pale, like hers, its glowing eyes wide with fear and curiosity. The child held a small piece of cloth in its hand, a scrap embroidered with the same mark on her wrist. The woman placed her hand gently on the child's head. This is why I cannot turn you away. The enforcers do not stop at travelers. They hunt the weak, the silent, the innocent. Every lie I tell, every risk I take, it is for them. The human's gaze softened. The child's trembling form reminded him of faces he had left behind long ago, people he could not save. He felt the weight of choice pressing down on him again. You want me to fight, he said quietly. She nodded. Not tonight, but soon. You will have no choice. When the time comes, your trust will mean life or death. The lanterns flickered as a gust of wind rattled the walls. The café groaned, its old beams creaking under the pressure. The shadows seemed to stretch longer, wrapping around them both. The human looked at her one last time, searching her face for a sign of deceit. But all he saw was resolve. She had already chosen her path long before he arrived. Now she was asking him to do the same. Slowly, he loosened the strap of his pack and set it on the table. The woman's eyes narrowed, her breath catching as if she had not expected him to reveal it so soon. The human unwrapped the first layer of cloth, just enough for the lantern light to catch the faint glimmer of what lay inside. A crystal, faintly glowing, alive with shifting patterns of light. Her eyes widened, and for the first time her calm cracked. She whispered with awe and fear, "You carry the Heartstone." The room fell silent. Even the shadows seemed to pause, the air heavy with the weight of revelation. The human covered it again quickly, his voice low but firm. "Now you know why I cannot trust easily." The woman stepped closer, her mark glowing faintly as if responding to the crystal. She placed her hand gently on the table, her whisper soft yet strong. "Then trust me not with your secret, but with your survival. That is all I ask." The human studied her face, the mark, the child standing behind her, the shadows that waited in silence. And though his doubt remained, something shifted within him. For the first time since entering the café, he felt less like prey and more like a man standing at the edge of choice. And as the lanterns dimmed, he realized trust was no longer just a word. It was the only path forward. The crystal had been hidden away again, wrapped tightly in cloth, but the weight of its presence filled the back room. The human sat in silence, his thoughts tangled between trust and danger. Across from him, the alien woman stood calm, though her glowing wrist mark pulsed faintly as if alive. The child at her side clutched the embroidered cloth, watching the stranger with wide, glowing eyes. The walls of the café groaned against the storm outside, but the human felt another storm rising within. He wanted answers, yet he feared the truth she might give. He wanted safety, but he could no longer deny that safety would not come without risk. A sudden sound broke his thoughts. The front door slammed open, its echo shaking the walls. Heavy boots stamped across the floorboards, sharp voices cutting through the air. The woman froze for a heartbeat, then turned sharply to the human. "They are back," she whispered, "and this time they will not leave so easily." The curtain trembled as the enforcers pushed through. Their armor glinted under the lantern. Light, their weapons raised, their eyes scanning every corner. The human's stomach tightened. He had faced threats before, but these soldiers were different. They were ruthless, controlled, and relentless. One of the enforcers stepped forward, tall and broad, his helmet glowing faintly at the edges. He spoke in a guttural voice that shook the walls. "We know he is here. Hand him over or we burn this place to ash." The woman stood firm, her arms crossed. This cafe is mine. No human hides here. The leader stepped closer, towering over her. His weapon gleamed, its edge sharp and cruel. He leaned forward, his voice a growl. Do not test us, woman, we smell him. His scent is fresh, you will not protect him for long. The human's pulse raced. He pressed back into the shadows, but he knew he could not stay hidden forever. The woman's calm defiance bought him moments, but not enough. His mind raced with choices: fight, flee, or surrender. None promised survival. The child behind the sea, woman whimpered softly. The sound drew the attention of one of the soldiers. He sneered, stepping toward the small figure. Perhaps we search the little ones. They hide things well. The woman moved instantly, placing herself between the child and the soldier. Her voice cut sharp as a blade. Touch them and you will not leave this room alive. The soldier raised his weapon, laughing coldly. The tension cracked like lightning. The human felt his blood surge. He could not remain a ghost in the shadows any longer. He stepped out. His boots struck the floor hard, his eyes fixed on the armed men. The soldiers turned, weapons raised, surprise flashing across their faces. I am the one you seek, he said, his voice steady, though his heart thundered. Leave them. Take me. The woman's head snapped toward him, her eyes fierce. No, do not. But it was too late. The enforcers surged forward. The leader barked an order and 2 soldiers rushed the human. He grabbed a wooden crate and swung it hard, shattering it against one soldier's armor. The impact staggered the man, but the second soldier lunged, blade cutting through the air. The human ducked, the blade slicing inches above his head. The cafe erupted into chaos. The woman moved like flowing water, her hand glowing with the mark as she struck the soldier, threatening the child. Her touch seared his armor, forcing him back with a howl. The lanterns swayed wildly, shadows twisting across the walls. The human fought with raw desperation, his fists, his boots, even broken pieces of wood becoming weapons in his hands. He had no blade, no armor, but he had determination, and the weight of what he carried gave him strength he did not know he had. The soldiers pressed harder, their numbers overwhelming, but the woman's presence kept them from claiming victory. She moved with precision, her eyes burning, her mark blazing brighter with every strike. The child stayed hidden, clutching the cloth, trembling but silent. At last, the leader raised his hand. The soldiers froze, stepping back. The room fell into tense silence once more. The leader's voice was low and venomous. This is not finished. You cannot hide him forever. Next time your cafe will not stand. With that, the soldiers retreated, their boots echoing as they stormed out into the night. The curtain fell, the wind slammed the front door shut, and the cafe was left broken but standing. The human leaned against the wall, his chest heaving, his hands bruised and bleeding. The woman stood across from him, her silver blue skin glowing faintly in the dim light, her mark still pulsing with energy. You fool, she whispered, though her tone carried more worry than anger. You should have stayed hidden. Now they know for certain? The human looked at her, his voice rough. You risked everything for me. I could not let them hurt you or the child. Her eyes softened, but only for a moment. She stepped closer, placing her hand gently against his shoulder. Then we are bound now. Their threat is only the first. They will return stronger, merciless, and when they do, we must be ready. The human nodded, his body aching, his mind heavy. He had entered the cafe for warmth, for rest, but now he stood on the edge of war, and as the lanterns flickered weakly, he realized the first threat had only opened the door to many more. The cafe smelled of smoke and broken wood. Shattered, crates lay across the floor, lanterns flickered weakly, and the air still carried the echo of boots that had stormed away minutes earlier. The human sat at the edge of the counter, his hands bloodied, his chest still heaving from the fight. Across from him, the alien woman moved silently, gathering shards of glass with careful hands, her silver blue skin glowing faint in the dim light. The child sat near the back, hidden in the shadow of a crate, clutching the embroidered cloth tighter than ever. Wide eyes followed every movement, fear still heavy in the small frame. For a long while, no one spoke. The storm outside rattled against the walls, as if the whole outpost groaned under its weight. Finally, the woman broke the silence. "They will return," she said softly, her voice steady but edged with warning. "Next time, they will not test us. Next time, they will burn everything." The human lifted his gaze to her, his jaw clenched. "Then I should leave. If I go, they may not come back." She turned toward him sharply, her eyes flashing like steel. "Do you truly believe that? They will hunt you no matter where you run, and when they find you, they will leave no witness alive. Your presence here has only revealed the truth. Our fight is the same." The human pressed a hand to his chest, his breath unsteady. "I never asked for this fight. I only wanted to cross the colony to rest for a night and move on." She stepped closer, her mark glowing faintly on her wrist. "And yet fate has given you no choice. You carry the Heartstone. Do you think you can simply walk away with it untouched, unseen? You cannot, it is too late." Her words sank deep, heavy as chains. He looked down at his hands, bruised and shaking, then at the pack resting near his feet. The crystal inside seemed to pulse through the cloth, as though reminding him of its presence. He shook his head slowly. "And what if I give it up? What, if I let them take it, would that not end it?" For the first time her calm broke. Her voice rose, sharp and fierce. "No, if they take it, the resistance dies. If they take it, every child hiding in these shadows will be hunted to extinction. Do you not understand? It is not just a stone. It is life. It is memory. It is hope." The human looked toward the child again. Small, glowing eyes stared back, trembling yet unbroken. In that gaze, he saw the truth she spoke. To surrender the stone was not only to betray her, but to betray them all. The woman stepped closer still, her presence a mix of strength and sorrow. "I do not ask you to fight for me. I ask you to stand beside me when the storm returns. Alone, neither of us will survive. Together we might." Her hand lifted, palm open between them. It was not a command. It was an offer. The human stared at it. His mind wrestled with doubt. Trust was not a thing he gave freely. Too many times he had been betrayed, left behind, forced to stand alone. Yet tonight, she had lied for him, fought for him, shielded the child for him. And when the soldiers came, she had not run. Slowly he placed his hand against hers. Her skin was warm, the faint glow of her mark brushing against his own flesh. A strange pulse ran between them, a quiet spark, as if the stone itself responded to their choice. Her voice lowered to a whisper. "Then it is settled. We share the risk and we share the survival. From this night on, your path and mine are the same." He gave a short nod, his voice rough. "A deal of survival." The woman's expression softened, though shadows of worry still lingered in her eyes. She released his hand and turned to the child, crouching low. Her voice gentled as she spoke in her own tongue, a lullaby of safety. The child leaned into her embrace, the cloth still clutched tight. The human watched, quietly. He saw the weight she carried, not only for herself but for those who depended on her. And in that moment he understood something deeper. This was not a woman playing hero. This was someone bound by love, loss, and unbreakable duty. The storm outside howled louder, shaking the windows. The human stood, his body aching, his heart still torn but steadier than before. "Then we prepare," he said, "because when they come back we will not have the chance to hide." The woman rose, her eyes locking on his. "Yes, we prepare. For the night attack." Her words carried no fear, only resolve. And as the lanterns burned low, the human realized the deal was not only for survival. It was a bond that tied him to something larger than himself, something he could no longer ignore. The café was quiet, but the silence carried no peace. Broken crates had been pushed aside, lanterns replaced, yet the air remained heavy with the memory of the enforcers. The Kui human sat near the counter, cleaning the cuts on his hands with a strip of cloth. Across from him, the alien woman arranged jars and tools on the table, her movements sharp, focused, and precise. The child slept curled in the corner, still clutching the embroidered cloth, small breaths rising and falling in rhythm with the storm outside. "They will return tonight," the woman said, her voice low but certain. "Their pride will not let them wait. They failed once. They will come stronger." The human tightened the cloth around his palm. "Then we face them head on." She looked up at him, her eyes shining faintly in the dim light. "Are you ready to fight not just for yourself, but for this place, for us?" He hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded. "I am ready." The woman's mark glowed faintly as she pressed her hand against the table. "Then we prepare." Hours passed, each one heavier than the last. Together they reinforced the café. Tables were flipped and braced against doors. Lanterns were dimmed to give the room shadows for cover. The human checked every loose piece of wood, every shard of glass, every heavy object that could serve as a weapon. When the preparations were complete, they sat in silence. The storm outside had grown wilder, the wind howling through the streets, like a chorus of angry spirits. Then it came, a deep thud against the door. The wood shuddered. A second blow followed, harder, louder. The child stirred in fear, but the woman rushed to hold them close, whispering soft words of calm. The door burst. Inward, enforcers flooded the café. Their armor gleamed under the flickering lanterns, their weapons drawn, their faces hidden behind cruel masks. The human grabbed a heavy chair and swung it into the first soldier, shattering it across his chest. The soldier staggered back, but two more stepped forward. The woman moved like lightning. Her glowing wrist sliced across the air, striking one soldier with a force that cracked his armor. The mark pulsed brighter, feeding her strength. She spun, graceful and fierce, knocking another soldier against the wall. The café erupted into chaos. Lanterns shattered, sparks scattered across the floor. Crates toppled, spilling glowing jars that rolled and burst, filling the air with strange scents and thick smoke. Shadows danced wildly as the fight raged. The human fought with desperate strength. He ducked beneath a blade, drove his fist into an exposed joint of armor, and grabbed a broken table leg to use as a club. He had no training, no weapons of war, but his will carried him forward. The woman fought beside him, her movements precise, every strike burning with the power of her mark. Together they created a rhythm, one defending while the other attacked, their survival tied to each other's breath. But the enforcers were many. More poured through the door, their leader at the front, his weapon blazing with cruel light. He raised it high, bringing it down toward the human. The woman shoved the human aside, taking the blow across her shoulder. Pain ripped through her body, but she did not fall. Instead, she pressed her glowing hand against the weapon, searing it, until the leader pulled back with a roar. The human surged forward, slamming his makeshift club into the leader's knee. The armored giant staggered but did not fall. The battle pressed harder, the café trembling under every strike. At the edge of the room, the child clutched the cloth, their glowing eyes wide, tears running down their face. Yet even in fear, they did not cry out. They held their silence like a shield. The fight dragged on until smoke filled the room, making it hard to breathe. The woman's glow dimmed, her strength draining. The human's arms ached, his body bruised, but still he stood. Finally, with a shout, the woman drove her glowing fist into the leader's chest. The mark flared bright, a burst of light that shook the café. The leader crashed against the wall, his armor cracked, his weapon falling silent. The remaining soldiers faltered. For a moment, silence returned, broken only by the storm outside. Then the enforcers retreated, dragging their leader with them, their heavy boots thundering as they fled into the night. The café was left in ruins. Smoke hung heavy in the air, lanterns flickered weakly, and the smell of burnt wood clung to every corner. The human collapsed against the counter, his breath ragged. The woman leaned against the wall, blood running from her shoulder, her mark still glowing faintly. "We survived," he said, his voice rough, almost disbelieving. She gave a small nod, her eyes dark with exhaustion. "For now, but they will not stop." This was only the beginning. The child crawled from the shadows and pressed into her arms. She held them close, whispering in her tongue, her voice soft but steady despite her wounds. The human watched them, his heart heavy. He had come into the cafe as a traveler, seeking warmth. Now he stood in the wreckage of a battlefield, bound to a fight he could no longer escape. And as the storm raged outside, he knew the night attack had changed everything. The cafe was silent after the storm of battle. Smoke drifted through the air, carrying the bitter smell of burned wood and scorched metal. Tables lay shattered, shelves broken, and glowing jars cracked open across the floor. The once quiet refuge now looked like the ruins of a forgotten war. The human leaned heavily against the counter, his chest rising and falling in sharp breaths. His arms ached from every strike, his body bruised from every blow. Yet he still stood. Across from him, the alien woman pressed a cloth against her wounded shoulder, her silver-blue skin dim under the lantern light. The child sat curled beside her, clinging to her side, eyes wide but unbroken. For a long while no one spoke. Only the distant howl of the storm filled the silence. Finally, the human's rough voice broke through. "We survived." The woman lifted her gaze to him, her mark glowing faintly at her wrist. Her voice was steady, but her eyes carried the weight of truth. "Survival is not victory. They will return, stronger than before. Each time they fail, their anger grows." The human tightened his grip on the counter. "Then we fight again. Together." Her lips curved into the smallest of smiles, tired but genuine. "You speak as if you were born one of us." He looked toward the child, who still held the embroidered cloth tightly. The trembling in the small hands had stopped. The human saw in those glowing eyes the strength of survival, the strength of the woman who had risked everything. "I'm not one of you," he admitted quietly, "but I know what it means to protect something worth dying for." The woman studied him for a moment, her eyes searching his face. Then she spoke words that carried more weight than any blade. "Then you are one of us now." The storm outside grew softer, the wind dying down as if the night itself recognized the shift between them. The woman slowly rose to her feet, her body weak but her resolve strong. She moved behind the counter, the place where it had all begun. She motioned for him to sit. He obeyed, lowering himself onto the stool where he had first heard her whisper. The counter was scarred now, its surface cracked and burned, yet it still stood like a symbol of what they had endured. She poured from one of the unbroken jars, steam rising into the air. The scent was faintly sweet, laced with something sharp. She set the cup before him, her hand lingering for a moment longer than needed. "For a warm drink," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with meaning. "I can take care of you." The words were the same as before, but now they carried no hidden threat, no unanswered riddle. They were a promise. The human lifted the cup, the warmth spreading through his hands, chasing away the chill of the night. He looked at her across the counter, her tired face lit by the dim lanterns, and he understood. Her whisper had never been about the drink. It had been about trust, about survival, about standing together against the darkness. He drank slowly, the heat sinking into him, and for the first time since he had stepped into the cafe, he felt more than a traveler. He felt anchored. The child climbed onto the counter beside the woman, their small hand resting against the embroidered cloth. Their gaze met the human's, and in those glowing eyes he saw a question, silent but clear. Would he stay? He set the cup down, his voice firm. "I will not run. Not anymore." The woman's shoulders eased, her mark pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. "Then we prepare. Together. The heartstone must not fall, and as long as this cafe stands, it will remain, protected." He gave a small nod, feeling the truth of her words settle inside him. It was no longer her fight. It was theirs. The lanterns flickered low, the storm fading outside, leaving only the quiet breath of the night. The cafe bore scars of battle, but within its walls, something stronger had been forged. Behind the counter, promises had been made, promises of trust, of survival, of unity, and though the path ahead was filled with danger, neither the human nor the alien woman would walk it alone. The human lifted his cup once more, the warmth steady in his hands. The woman stood across from him, her eyes calm, her whisper carrying, through the silence, "For a warm drink I can take care of you always." And with those words, the night closed not in fear, but in the quiet strength of a bond that could not be broken.